In today's episode, we thought we'd get away from the noise, the mayhem, the crazy town, the fear, the anxiety that you hear in the mainstream media. It's out there, it's on everybody's lips. Well, we ask every single week, we ask our listeners to send in questions. And today is as good as any to deal with one of those questions. We were asked to really get into the nuts and bolts and outline the anatomy of our very best investments and our very worst. What's the essence of the thing that worked? What's the essence of the thing that didn't? And so without further ado, Clark and I tackle this question. This episode is designed as a little bit of light relief. It was fun to make, and we ask every single week, send in your questions. So here it is, Clark and David tackling big, tricky, Gordian's knot of a question. What works, what doesn't? Welcome to a new episode of the Burn Your Boats podcast. I have the pleasure to be here today with my co-host, Clark Lunt. It's been a while, Clark, since we hopped in here together and recorded an episode. What's going on, man?
Yeah, it's exciting to get back, man. It's been, we've been trying to get some really high quality guests in, so it's been fun. But we both like to hear ourselves talk, so it'll be nice to have just an episode of me and you bantering back and forth. And I think we've got a good one today. That's a bit full of some highs and lows, my friend, of just life and real estate in general.
Yeah, I've been out at Clark. I was out at a mastermind group out in Colorado last week. So obviously I didn't hop in on last week's episode. So looking forward to getting into this one. And the reason we're recording this episode is because we want to give you, the listener, some real world feedback. And so we got a question from one of the listeners, and it goes a little bit like this. Here's the question, right? Hey guys, I'm a former neighbor and friend of David's. Hey, Mike, how you doing? This is David. I enjoyed listening to your podcast, and I just wanted to suggest an episode idea that I at least would enjoy hearing. I would like to hear specific examples of, one, a single-family home investment that went extremely well, with specifics of investment, cash flow, capital gains, and capital gains taxes. This would be not to brag, but to represent the golden outcome when the right property at the right price in the right neighborhood is acquired. You may go back a few years to grab this data. So that's first question number one. Question number two, an investment that did not go as planned, also with specific numbers, and maybe with an adjustment that you were able to make that saved a good outcome or looks like it will eventually provide a non-terrible outcome. So what Mike is looking for is a little bit of the best and a little bit of the worst. And so we read this question. We're like, this is a great question. Why not deal with it head on and take a stab at this? And so you, the listener, can hear the kind of the specific mechanisms, specific organic materials that go into making a good deal and a bad deal. And so without further kind of ado, Clark, what do you think of the question?
I like the question because it enables us to kind of look backwards and we didn't discuss this beforehand. It's like what properties you're going to do or what properties I'm going to do. I'm going to give you a quick context on the reason why I chose the two properties that I'm going to kind of dive into the numbers in. Is one of the properties I bought in 2011 and one of the properties I bought in 2018. And so the reason why I wanted to get something with at least 5-6 years worth of just owning it and running it is because sometimes properties do really well at first and then they tend to go sideways, but it takes 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years to truly see if that was a good investment or not. And it can go either way, right? You can buy a property that you thought was like a dump and it ended up, being built next to, the Amazon, warehouse moved in next door and it's like the hottest rental in town, right? And you didn't know that when you first bought it. So just wanted to give you a context, David, as to the two that I bought. I've owned for a while. I've been able to see the highs and the lows to be able to take away why I really like them or why I really didn't like them. What say you?
No, I think that's a great way of approaching this is, folks, look, it takes time for the true essence of a real estate deal to work its way
It does.
to an actual result. So a lot of people buy a piece of real estate last year and like, oh, this is a terrible investment. The truth of the matter is, you just don't know yet, right?
Yep.
The economic environment right now is, let's call it neutral, right? So it's not going up, it's not going down. There's some areas where there's a little bit oversupply at the moment, and where prices might be soft at the moment, are places where rentals might be a little bit soft at the moment. But if you've just owned a piece of real estate for 2 or 3 years, you don't know the result. That's just it. It's you don't have enough. They haven't given it enough time. Real estate is not a stock. It's not some meteoric AI stock that you know within a month or two. It's not Bitcoin. It's not what real estate's a slow burner. So in order to answer this question correctly, to your exact point, Clark, I think we need to go back quite a bit and look at some of the performance of these things matched up against each other from around the same time frame of acquisition. There's really just no point in comparing a property you bought 10 minutes ago to a property you bought 15 years ago. So do you want to go, what way do you want to go? Do you want to go your worst deal ever or your best deal ever? Which way do you want to start? And I'll go the opposite. Whichever you start, I'll do the opposite.
I'll start with the and this is a really good property that I bought. I think that luckily, David, you probably have a lot of properties that you feel really proud of and have done really well, and then you've got your duds, right? Hopefully, you've got more that you're proud in than the duds, and I feel the same way. I kind of have a quick philosophy in terms of investing, and I want to kind of tie it into this, is that a lot of people that get into real estate, they just, how do they get that equity to be able to start like fueling buying rentals? Is they buy their first house, they live in it, and guess what? It's in a decent neighborhood and goes up in value, right? And they've got $100K or $200K of equity, and they're able to either sell that or refinance it to go buy a rental, right? But that's kind of like step one, I call, David, is like the ignorance, right? Like you're the ignorant investor. You just want to buy in a nice place that you want to live where it's safe for the kids, right? But then what happens is that you get that equity and you start becoming the YouTube expert. You listen to the podcast, everyone's talking about cash flow. And what do, right? Do you go buy another property just like the one that you bought? No, because that probably doesn't cash flow very well. So you become stage two, which is the cash flow investor, right? And you buy these junky C-class properties in areas that don't appreciate because they cash flow. And you learn, you're like, after you own them for a while, right? 5, 6, 8, 10 years, you see that maybe that wasn't the greatest investment because it's still worth the same amount as it was 5 years ago. And yet I've spent $40,000 in repairs and maintenance and vacancy and all the fun things that we all know about as landlords. And then you kind of evolve to step three, which is being able to strategically invest in those better neighborhoods, those better areas where they go up in value, right? So that's just kind of a quick summary as to what I've seen with my own journey. And I'm sure that people listening could kind of do that. So let's jump into the numbers, David. Step one, stage one of Clark's investing journey, and probably yours as well, is the ignorant investor, right? So I bought 176 Enchanted Way, Santa Rosa Beach, Florida. Okay, go look it up on Zillow. The amazing thing about Zillow is it paints the whole story, where it was listed for sale, when you bought it, when you sold it, when you rented it, when you re-rented it out at a new price, right? So you can really see the evolution of the property, good or bad, right? So this property, and I want to put this in context, David, because if you say, well, I bought this property in 2011, so of course, it was super cheap then. And like, why, you'll see the memes of people that were 16 years old in 2011. So why weren't they buying 3 houses a year when they were like a sophomore in high school? Like, I get it. But I also have a property, David. My first house I ever bought in 2005, I bought it for 70 grand and it's now worth 100. Okay. So what's that? Almost 20 years and it's gone up 30K, 30K. So there are times where you can buy properties that literally just are stuck in time, right? And I own a few of those. But here's my ignorant investor, 176 Enchanted Way. I bought it for 107. Now, was that a good deal or not a good deal at the time? So let's go back to 2011. It was listed in September of 2010 for 110. Okay. I bought it with a whopping 3K discount on the MLS, vanilla ice cream through a realtor, 5 months later for 107. Okay. So that was the market. Like people didn't want to buy it for 110 and it took 5 months. So you may say, oh, well, I would have bought 40 of those in 2011. Well, no, you didn't because no one else did. And it took 5 months for me to close on that. And I just did a traditional conventional mortgage. Right. So it was built in 2003. Okay. So I closed on it for 107,000 in 2011. Okay. I knew it was going to be a rental. I bought it with 20% down. So I put $22,000 down, whatever it was. And it rented for $1,200. And at the time, my mortgage payment was like 1,100 or 1,000, something like that. So obviously it didn't cash flow very much. The minute that, and I gave it to a property manager because it was about an hour from where I lived. Okay. But it was in a cookie cutter neighborhood, David. It was kind of like a small suburb of like of a larger city. And there was some in between there was a gap between like the suburb and where all the cool stuff was. And so that's why it wasn't as appealing to, I guess, every buyer, right? But I was able to get a tenant in at 1,200, cookie cutter neighborhood. They all look the same, okay? And it rented for $1,200, okay? Now I'm going to give you the numbers since then. Then it went to 1,300. Then it went to 1,350. Then it went to 1,550. It stayed at 1,575 for 4 years, okay? Same rent, didn't move it up or down, okay? COVID hit, it jumps to 2,000 in rent, and now it's currently at 2,250. So the rent was, there's probably $1,000 worth of cash flow in this deal. I paid 110 for it. It appraised in 2023 at the end. So it's been about a year and 2 or 3 months. It appraised at 431. Okay. I would say today it's probably worth, if things have softened a little bit, it's probably worth about 400K. It was built in 2002. Depending where you're at in the country, to me, living in Florida, that's like brand freaking new. If you're sitting in like where my brother's sitting in Fort Worth, Texas right now, that's like some old dog. It depends on where you're at. If you're in Cleveland, Ohio, that's like a brand new house. So you get it. So the basically the takeaways from that deal, right? That I've stepped back and I've thought, okay, it's in a cookie cutter neighborhood. So I've always had good tenants. For the most part, I've never chased rent. I don't think I've ever had to do an eviction. Maybe there was one person that I had throughout the 12, 13 years that I've owned it where they just stopped paying, but they kind of just left on their own accord, which was fine. I've had to do very little, right? I've had to swap out an AC. The entire neighborhood all looks very similar. So all the kitchens are the same. All the tile is the same. So when people go into rent in these areas, they don't expect like 2025, white shaker cabinets and quartz countertops because no one's done upgrades because you don't really need to, right? They're a 20-year-old kitchen, but they're still manageable for a rental. So I've had to spend very little money on just kind of like uptake here and there. And it's been a great property. I actually own another one as well in that community that I bought a year later for 105,000. And so if I make $1,000 a month, the condition has been very easy to maintain. My property manager loves it because it's just cookie cutter. It's easy to manage. The tenants are good. So I want you to take away from this property and my experiences that how does that relate to 2025, right? Are you gonna be able to go to buy this house for 110,000 and get $1,200 of rent? You are not, right? As we all know. But is there a version of that in 2025, David? You can go right now, go to the burbs, right? Of the town that you live in, and builders are giving away these properties. They are throwing everything but the kitchen sink at you in terms of closing cost assistance, 4.5% buy down rates. Everything that I've seen, they are giving to you. They're giving you discounts on prices. Guess what? Are you going to walk into any cash flow? No. Did I walk into any cash flow? No. But guess what? What's the cash flow? $100 do I care about, or $1,000? Do I care about that, or do I care that it's tripled in price and I now have $300,000 in equity in that property that's been a low maintenance? Tenants are happy, property manager's happy, the guy that goes out and the handyman to fix stuff, he's happy. There's no snarling dogs coming on every time he's trying to fix things. So long story short, take what's happened, my positive experience, and go and look really, really closely at these new builds from these larger builders that can give you all the rate buy downs, whether it's a townhouse, and mine has an HOA, right? And I know a lot of people want to stay away from HOAs. My HOA fee is like $150 a month, so it's not bad. They're not super controlling. They send me letters from time to time. Don't park on the yard. all the things that they do, but it keeps my tenants in line. So I kind of like it in certain ways. So that is my takeaway, is that if you can go look at the burbs and you can kind of break even on it right now, in 12 years, will it triple in price? Will you be making $1,000 in rent? I would say that with my experience that it's very, very manageable. So David, that is my stage one ignorant investor, that I ironically, you are much better off in stage one than you are in stage two, and you have less experience. So I hope a lot of people listening hear that. David, what is your best, or one of your best home run deals that you love, that you really made some good decisions on? What does that look like in your world?
Clark, that was really, really good advice right there, what you've just given people, right? That the builders right now are absolutely giving houses away, and they're not going to make any sense in the near term, right? They're not going to, you're going to cash flow, maybe just a little bit. Rents are not going to be all that exciting. You're probably not going to make a huge amount of appreciation this year, next year, the year after, because guess what? That builder is still going to be giving away houses next year as well, right? But what you do is you're setting it in stone. You're starting to pull depreciation in your taxes. So you're putting little to no money down, and yet you're getting a big, big discount off your taxes in year one, right? You're getting that for free, right?
Yep.
Then you hold, to your point, every year you get these little bumps, a little bit more rent, a little bit more appreciation. Because remember, this house, as time goes on, the builders are selling it now for $325. They're giving the house away because of high interest rates. But they can't build that house and sell it for $325 5 years from now.
Right.
Or 10 years from now because of inflation. Yeah. So it's the inflation hedge that's going to do the work for you on that one over the long term. But in the medium term, it's the tax breaks are your incentive. The fact that you own this house, you put little or no money down, that's not going to give you anything really, like in terms of monthly cash flow or appreciation those first few years, but it will give you tax breaks, and it'll be a great inflation hedge. So go out to those builders, go out to the suburbs, and pick up those, the no money down. I just last night I was watching a real estate video about, builders, giving builder incentives and mortgages out with no money down. No money down. How is that even a thing, right? So if you're a real estate investor, go out there to the suburbs, get some builders to give you deals with no money down, take your tax breaks, take your licks in the first year or two in terms of cash flow and appreciation, in the knowledge that you've got something that's fighting inflation on your behalf going forward. Right. So you asked me a question, which means I got to howl. I got to go run over to my sheet here.
Let's get the best one, my friend.
Very best one. So I don't invest for cash flow. I used to invest for cash flow, but as I look back, I got some properties here in front of me, and I'm looking at the return on down payment. So you buy a house for $100,000, you put $20,000 down. My down payments have been 20% throughout the years. And so on that metric alone, I'm looking like they really jump out. And one of the things that jumps out at me right away is the houses I bought for cash have the lowest return, right? That's really interesting. So here's a house. I bought it for $350. It's worth $427. There's $77,000 worth of equity. That's a 22% return on cash. It's not a great return, considering I'm looking at houses here that have 1,000% return, 996% return, 693% return, 776% return, 944% return, 645% return, 698% return, 500% return, 282% return, and then 22% return. Which one of those sounds better?
That's a tough one, David.
Well, what's going on there is in terms of capital growth as a proportion of your down payment. So leveraged versus non-leveraged.
Right.
It's a no-brainer. You use debt. Use debt in real estate. This idea of going out and buying real estate with a 5.5% return or cap rate, pro forma, whatever people want to call it, ROI, 5.5. You just go buy, like, take the same money and buy a government bond, or take the same money and buy AT&T stocks that throw off 6% a year. There's just no point in buying real estate with cash. There's just no point in doing it. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, it's the slogan of OPM, right? Other people's money. Is it makes no sense to just pay all cash for something, because you're losing all the leverage, and you don't get, you can't write off the interest that doesn't exist. It's a no brainer, and that's fine. Like, I would love for someone to say, well, look, I only pay cash for my properties. I can sleep at night, and I'm not worried about, if rents go up or down or this or that, or I have to replace a roof. But at the end of the day, you're scaling so slowly that it just doesn't fit our kind of mantra of being able to get financially free, because it takes so long to buy another house cash.
So let's answer your specific question, Clark. You asked me which was my best investment, and I didn't know the answer until I did a little bit of math here. And I hopped into a sheet, and I decided to look at it from that specific perspective. And something that jumped out at me has made me laugh, right? So somewhere around 2014 or 15, I bought a duplex property for $140,000, right? I took out a $28,000 loan. Okay. It's now worth $427,000. And this is the funny part. I keep on preaching the opposite. This is not in a great area of town, but it's Section 8. It's a duplex with 2 Section 8 tenants. So recall, I paid $140 for it. Each side rents for $1,600, so it rents for around $3,200 a month. I have never had any turnover in either of the units. Never. There's been never any turnover ever. Right. So this ROI here, it's over 1,000%. It's 1,100% in terms of ROI, in terms of just straight dollars accumulated as a proportion of the down payment. And that makes me smile. It makes me laugh. It also only has a 27% loan to value, right? It has a 73% equity rate. So that pips, just on the data, that pips a fair few of the houses on my list here. However, let's talk about the details then of this home. So, duplex that's in a very, very fast gentrifying neighborhood close to downtown. So it's had very rapid growth in valuation because it's close to super close to a metro. But I didn't pay, like 2 miles north of here. I cross a line in the road, and this duplex would be worth twice to 3 times at that time what I paid for it. Now that delta is more like twice. Okay, so it's a $450,000 to $500,000 duplex. The equivalent on the good side of town is probably somewhere around $650,000. Whereas the equivalent when I bought it for, I just told you the number was about $140,000, and it's now worth $450,000. So it's got to be said here that gentrification, Clark, has done most of the work on this one.
Yeah,
right.
For sure.
I have literally no debt on it, right? $70,000 of debt. I take in $3,200 a month in rent. I don't know if we hear from our tenants all that much ever. Property manager never ever calls me on it. These tenants just stay year after year. And so when people beat up on Section 8, when they're like ragging on it, they go, you must have terrible tenants. I got great tenants. I got a lady who looks after her granddaughter. She's going nowhere. I've got another lady, and she has 2 young girls. They go to the local school. They're going nowhere. And so this is, I don't know, over 10 years of purchase, very little maintenance, almost no phone calls. I did have to put a new roof on it at one point in time. AC went out on one of the units at one point in time. But outside of that, they're not asking me for anything. I don't have to give them anything. Now, I might have to renovate it a little bit when it turns over, but I'm going to put probably friends of theirs in when they come to leave. And so, you really invest in real estate, Clark, for growth, for capital appreciation. In terms of selling this, we have $310,000 worth of equity. So to answer Mike's question specifically, if I was going to sell this at all, I would 1031 exchange this. So like sales cost would be $427,000, probably about a $7,000 loan, $70,000 loan left. So we would roll over $310,000. So we wouldn't pay tax now. We would, because we don't need the capital right now. So we were to sell this home though, and pay the piper on it. I would imagine that we would roll out of here with 6% to 18, and then another, so probably about 20% less than this. So we'd probably roll out of this property somewhere around $260,000 worth of equity. But to the point that I'd like to make to most real estate investors is you don't sell real estate. That's not like this concept of selling real estate, Mike, is the wrong approach. When you want money, just lever up your real estate. So let's say I wanted $150,000 because the kids are going to school next year and I needed $150,000. I would just refinance that house. The $3,200 a month I get in rent that I enjoy good cash flow off it right now, would the cash flow get wiped away? But that's how I would take my $150,000 or $200,000 because I've got lots of equity, and I would pay no tax on it. And then the tenants would continue to pay off that loan. So you don't use real estate to sell it. You use real estate as little piggy banks, as ATMs. You tap that equity when and if you need it. And if you don't need it, you just let it ride and let it ride. So there is, ironically, I did not think I was going to be telling you that a duplex in kind of a somewhat low-income neighborhood that experienced massive amounts of gentrification was going to be the answer I gave you, Clark. But there's the best one, apparently. It's just in terms of percentiles. I got higher value homes that haven't had the same percentiles, and they've made more money essentially because they're higher. But in terms of pure percentile, gentrification seems to be the way forward.
I'm glad that we're kind of at the halftime right now, David. So we've covered the wins, right? The two some of our favorite deals. Just while you're listening to this, if you feel like this episode is kind of giving you value, please, hit the share button, send it to a friend or a family member. We really appreciate the support because we want to help build that confidence so you can go out and buy the property that you bought in 2014, except it's today, right? So that 10 years from now, you're the one that's able to look back and say, God, I'm so glad I bought that property that didn't cash flow then, but now I look like a genius, right? So we appreciate that support. So David, let's hop into it. I'm really glad that you went that route with that Section 8 duplex, because I have the antithesis of the Section 8. But it's not because it was Section 8, is because of where I bought it. So I'm going to go to the train wreck, right, of the portion of the show. So
I'm looking forward to this one.
So we're in stage 2 now, right? Remember, my first deal was stage 1. I was the ignorant investor. I'm just buying where I'd want to live, and it just seemed like a normal place, and it was, ironically, and it makes it easy to rent out and all that. Now let's fast forward to 2018. So that's 7 years later. Guess what I have, David? Tons of knowledge, talked to all these investors, talked about how important cash flow was and how if you buy these super cheap properties, they're just going to print money. Okay. So now I'm armed with all this knowledge, most of it being bad knowledge, but I didn't know that in 2018. So 2018, 7 years ago, Clark, still didn't have any hair. So I was still bald then. So unfortunately, I looked the same. But so I bought a property on 4017 East Grove Street in Tampa, Florida. So If you bought anything in Tampa, Florida in 2018, we've had massive growth, massive gentrification, as you were talking about with your previous property. However, not all C-class properties are created equal, right? You can have a C-class property that's just on the verge of that gentrification happening, which is how you explained it. Well, I bought the one, David, that was not on the verge of gentrification, and it had a bunch of stuff, a bunch of C-class commercial. But I didn't care, right? Because I was just looking at a spreadsheet and I was like, wait, if I buy it for this, it's already renting for that. The tenants are cool with the condition of it. This thing's going to be a cash machine, right? And it was for a while. Okay, so let's dive into the numbers. So in this October of 2018, 4017 East Grove Street, it's a 3-bedroom, 1-bath, 1,000 square foot. There was already a Section 8 tenant in there. So I actually bought it from an investor for $40,000. Okay. So I bought it from a wholesaler. Okay. So let's just make a quick distinction. I bought the first property on the MLS. I had inspections and that. Well, I bought this one cash. It's a quick deal. I probably closed in 2 weeks. It was only 40 grand. So it wasn't hard to scrape up the cash for that deal. I think I used a kind of a private money loan that I ended up refinancing out a few years later. Bought it for 40K. Already a tenant in place, David, spending or paying $853. So for everyone out there that knows the 1% rule, this was a 2% rule, right? But here's what I had to do. I had to sell my soul, David. I didn't know it at the time I was selling my soul, but I sold it so far down the river. And it came with a tenant. It was in crap condition, but it was Section 8, and they were fine with it because they were only paying probably $150 a month out of that portion of the rent where they had to pay it, and you and I were paying the rest through tax monies, right? So I said, you know what? I'm not going to upset the apple cart. They're cool with it. My property manager, they pay on time because they're only having to spend $150. Why would I go in and renovate it and spend all this money? So what did I do? I didn't borrow any renovation money, right? I just borrowed the private money to buy the property. So I'm into it for basically $0. Plus, maybe I think I spent $1,000 or $2,000 and fixing some rotted wood, some things that Section 8 require you to do every year because they do an annual inspection. But it's like, do outlets work? They're not looking at how pretty the kitchen is or isn't. They really don't care. They just want to make sure that everything is safe, the plumbing works, that there's no rotted wood, windows operate, screens, things of that nature, right? That's cheap stuff to fix. So fast forward, 2018, I was getting $853, right? These tenants don't care. They don't really report a lot of stuff when it's broken. They just kind of move on with their day. Then I got $873. Then it went to $1110. Then it went to $1409. You can see as we moved into COVID, the Section 8 housing payment kept having to go up with the retail market through COVID because everyone would take their properties off Section 8 because you could rent it for so much more to a retail tenant. Lastly, I was getting $1745. Okay, so the rent basically doubled in 6 years. So what happened? Well, as the rent doubled, their portion, David, started to go up a little bit. So now they're having to bring $300 or $400 to the table instead of the $175, right? And you may think, well, that's not a big deal. It's only a couple $100. Well, apparently it was a big deal to this lady, and she stopped paying. Okay, so for about 3 months, they just ran out the clock. It took me 3.5 months to evict them. The sheriff was sick. He couldn't go out there. I'll give you a laundry list of things. And so after 3.5 months, and oh, by the way, there was a huge plumbing issue, David, to where I had to turn the water off. So for the last 2 months, these people were living with zero water. Okay. Can you imagine living in a place with no water, right? Showers, the restroom, you can imagine it. I'm not going to go any further, right? So for 2 months, these people just stayed. They're like, well, it's still a free place to stay, right? So again, think about this. The quality of the tenant that I have in there is just willing to stay, right? And so long story short, they finally get evicted, right? The place looks exactly how you can picture it in your head. I never did any upgrades, right? So then I go to say, all right, what do I want to do now? Because now I'm staring at a $30,000 to $40,000 renovation. Because guess what? Now the market, David, as you and I both know, and a lot of people are experiencing, the rental marketing is softening. So when the rental market softens, right, buyers, tenants get pickier, right? They're not going to there's not a line out the door to rent your place anymore because the renter has more power than they used to maybe last year or the year before. So now if you're not presenting a really high quality product, right, then they're not going to, they're just going to go down the road to something that's a nicer condition. And why would they do anything else? So I'm like presented with two things. Do I just want to sell it as is? Okay. Or do I want to renovate it? So I tried to sell it as is. Okay. And I put it out for 130K cash. I said, look, as is, take it. You know, it needs everything. No bites, right? Getting low offers, 100,000. But something that we'll have to do another episode on, David, is that, you know, when you talked about refinancing, right? Well, I did refinance this property and put it back up to probably 70 cents on the dollar. Okay. But it got appraised in 2023 at probably the height of where that thing would appraise at 180. So so the bank, then if I were to sell that, they're going to take 70% of that loan, which is about 130, 120, whatever that looks like. So I said, I can't actually sell it for any less than that, because I'm literally going to have to sell it and then bring a check to the table to make my bank whole, right? Again, this is the property that had the 2% rule and everything, but I didn't borrow the renovation up front. And so now I'm starting to pay for the sins of my 2018 investing self. So now I'm into it for, I can't, I don't have a choice. I have to renovate it. And it's still, the area around it is still not very good. So there's not a lot of new commercial coming in. There's no flips on the street. There was actually 3 new construction houses that started, and I guess the guy ran out of money, so they're just like shells sitting there, which is always great. So there's like graffiti on the half-built houses. Gotta love that, right? Nothing that a tenant or a buyer would love to see is like graffiti on half-built houses to like make you feel safe about putting your mom in that house, right? So now I'm at a point right now where I'm having to renovate the property with 35 grand plus out of my pocket, right? I've already taken, you know, the refi and used some of those funds to buy other properties. And so the takeaway, I'm going to renovate it, right? I'm going to fund the deal to renovate it, and I'm hoping I can get about 2,000, right? Which will be great. At the end of the day, if I can get 2,000 rent through Section 8, I still believe in Section 8. I just had a tenant that ran out of money and they ran out the clock. But ultimately, here's the takeaways that I want you to think about when you're out there and you're looking at that $50,000 house that rents for $750, right? Well, that $50,000 house is not going to be renovated. It's going to be old. It's going to be in an area of town that's not great. Okay. But David, you bought the C-class duplex in a quote unquote bad area of town in 2014. But look what happened, right? The strategic positioning of that house has slowly, the gentrification has kind of moved toward that duplex, making it more valuable. Whereas my C-class asset hasn't. So if you are interested in looking at trying to see if you want to buy David's C-class versus my C-class, okay, here's what you can do. Number one is drive down the street, okay? And you need to physically get in your car, right? And if you don't get in your car, then you better have a trusted individual to do it if you live out of state and you're looking to invest. When you're driving down the road, do you see pride of ownership whatsoever? Like, do you see houses that have been renovated and flipped, right? We always see those online. Do you start to see people that care, or do you see broken down cars in the street, right? Obviously, it's pretty easy to get the vibe of the street when you turn onto it. How do you feel? How does that street make you feel? Do you feel safe? Do you feel like you can bring your mom to that property at 6 p.m. on a Friday night and you're going to feel safe, or you're not, right? So that's like number one. Number two, go drive around the immediate 1 to 2 mile area. Okay. Do you see Starbucks? Do you see Panera Bread? Do you see, nice stuff? Or do you see like broke down gas stations, locally owned gas stations with bars on the windows, right? So even if the street is coming, but Starbucks decided to go, 4 blocks away, well, Starbucks, their demographic research team is a lot better than your team, right? So if you can start looking at it more from like a multi-family point of view, where you start looking at the demographics of the area, what's the annual income of the average income of the people that are living in that specific zip code, you can start to see trends, right? So if you go out and drive a mile or a mile and a half around and you start to see some, a new car wash, a new like private school, like things that make it feel like it's safer, that people are investing like money to build A-class commercial, then it's going to bleed into these neighborhoods, and eventually the houses are either going to get knocked down, renovated, or they're not. And so in my situation, David, there is none of that stuff. There's still the old mom and pop gas stations with the 2 dudes sitting on the front, drinking a 40, and we've all been through that and seen it, right? And so if you have too many of those gas stations with dudes drinking 40s on the front of the street, it's not going to bode well for the value of that property to go up. And then what happens is it ties your hands. So now the value stays low. Okay. You still, roofs get old, whether they're in good neighborhoods or bad neighborhoods. Roofs don't, tend to care which house they're on. So I'm stuck now with a property that I wanted to sell, I wanted to get rid of, but because everyone talks about burring and refinancing, the burr method kind of forced me into keeping it because I did scrape some equity out and I didn't buy in a gentrifying area where you can burr, David, no problem, and still probably make some cash flow. Whereas I'm going to put 30,000, you know how long it's going to take me to get that $35,000 back, plus the appreciation is going to be very, very slow. So keep that in mind in terms of drive around the area, get in your freaking car, drive slow, and start rubbernecking everything to see what you think. Do people want to go live near this place? Is there a nice grocery store, or is there Tom's grocery store that's like half the shelves are empty of food, right? And then also too, remember is that you're going to have higher quality tenants, you're going to have happier property managers, and don't sell your soul like I did because you say, well, I can buy a $60,000 house and get $1,000 a month rent. That is like the biggest enabler for you to stay in my stage 2, which is the cash flow investor. So I'm getting out of that, David. I'm having to unfortunately spend it's a $35,000 lesson so I can have a house. It's probably not going to be worth much more than it already was, but that's my train wreck, David. So what do you got?
Let me give the listener a little bit. Let me parse that just a little bit. All right, to give you that kind of just juxtaposition. I was talking about I put $30,000 down, and that $30,000 has created $330,000 worth of equity, right? And you put what? No dollars down. But
no
now
dollars
you're
down.
putting your $30,000 down.
Yep.
So now we're both in it for the same amount.
Yep.
But you have zero equity.
Yep.
And I have 1,100% equity.
Yeah.
So let's just figure that out. Let's figure that why out. Here's what I see when you're going to buy in these kind of challenged neighborhoods. Number one, they need, if you're looking for gentrification, it needs to be within probably half a mile, most 3/4 of a mile from something cool, from a cool neighborhood, a cool street, a cool thing, cool new bars, cool new restaurants, new hipster neighborhoods. Because remember, a lot of young people that are hipsters, I'll just use that word, they're more than happy to buy into these lower income neighborhoods, but they need to be generally within walking distance of something cool. That's kind of number one. Number two is not all low income neighborhoods are built and made the same. And I'll tell you the big distinction between what I'm hearing you say, Clark, and my example of my low income home. Within the United States, in a lot of cities, particularly here in Florida, they expanded and grew a lot in the 1920s and the 1930s, right? And so that inner core has quite beautiful neighborhoods and quite beautiful architecture. Now, during the 50s and 60s, we had a lot of flight, out to the suburbs. So some of these inner core neighborhoods with large lots, with large homes, they were gentrified neighborhoods that went downhill, right? During the period of the flight to the suburbs. Well, now the suburbs are taking these neighborhoods more seriously again. So if you're within a mile of cool stuff and you're in a neighborhood that was once a gentrified neighborhood but just went downhill, that's where I'm seeing those neighborhoods re-gentrifying, right? So they might be, quote unquote, in a low income neighborhood, but it wasn't always that way. Whereas if you go like 4 miles out of town, 5 miles out of town, and it's a low income neighborhood, and it's not re-gentrifying, and it was always low income, it was never a desirable neighborhood at any point in time for any reason. I think that's the difference between your experience of a low income neighborhood and mine. Mine was within half a mile of cool stuff.
Right.
And it used to be a beautiful neighborhood, but just
Yeah.
got run down a little bit. But I could see that it would make its way back up again.
I want to make one caveat too, is that like if I look at if we were doing Burn Your Boats 2022, right, before it existed, and we did this exact same topic, and I did this exact same property, I would be like, I'd probably have a much different approach to it. I'd say, oh, it's 2022. I've owned it 4 years now. I've got a Section 8 tenant. They pay on time. They're paying $1,400 a month. I had to put like zero money into it. And guess what? They pay. They don't bother me. And I remember I haven't spent that 35 grand yet. Gone through 3 months of eviction. It's stressful. All that stuff. So just know that like if you're buying that lower end property where it's not within a distance of anything, and you're making 300, 400, 500, $600 a month cash flow, you're not actually making that cash flow. You're just stealing from your future repair budget, right? Your future vacancy budget, because it's coming. And the slogan, there's no one gets a free lunch, right? If it's too good to be true, it probably is. All of these types of properties, I don't care who you are, your time is coming, right? It may come in year 3, it may come in year 8, but eventually those tenants are going to move out, or they're going to do something that's not going to be good for you, and you're going to be faced with this wall of what that you're going to have to deal with. But sometimes it takes a while, and that's why I wanted to pick this property that I've owned 5, 6, 7 years, because if you ask me from day 1 to year 5, I'm like, Dave, it's a home run, man. Who cares if it's not worth anything? It's an infinite return, but it's coming. And I've got other properties that I'm facing the music on as well.
All right, let's go to the other side of my coin. Do you want to hear my
What
worst?
do you got?
All
Yep,
right.
let's hear it, man. Make me feel better, David. Make me feel better about that I'm not the only one out there with the shit box that's still a shit box.
Well, you know what? I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to surprise you here with this one, Clark. I'm going to pick out a property that, and I'm surprised. I'm surprised I'm saying this, because I'm, in my day to day, I always tell people to go out there and buy quality, right? But there's a little caveat to that. So here's how. Now, in fairness, the time horizon is not the best on it, right? But here's a property here I bought for $535,000, and I haven't refinanced it yet. It's in I will, but it is probably worth $510,000 now. Okay. So I want you to think about this in the terms of use of cash, right? So I've just done the math on it here. The return on this home is 4.5%, cash on cash, 4.5%. The value softened maybe a little bit, right? No leverage on it whatsoever, Clark. So I rent it for $3,200 a month. I own it about 3 years. Okay, so we've yet to see. Class A neighborhood. Class A, right? Great tenants, right? They've never turned over. They pay on time. No headaches whatsoever. No appreciation whatsoever. And a 4.5% return. Okay, now, if I take the same money, $500,000, and I'd put it into alternative investments, in the form of, in my case, in your case, private lending, right? That $500,000 would be throwing off about $5,500 to $6,000 a month. No depreciation, whatever. So the value would still be $515,000, right? Because the principal is protected. And I'd be taking about 500 or 5,300 a month or so, had I taken the exact same cash and done something different with it rather than buying real estate, right? And so kind of my takeaway from that one is that it's a controversial response, in that it's Class A property. It will appreciate over time, right? But my big error, my big mistake on it is that I haven't levered it yet. I haven't levered it because of high interest rates. And so I'm using that cash flow as cash flow at the moment. Okay. But my biggest mistake is that there's no leverage. And if there was leverage, then at least I could take 300 of that and invest it in a different format, right? And so my takeaway to the listener here is, I don't think you should ever buy real estate with cash. I just think it's a very low return. Had I taken exactly the same dollars, I'd get $5,600 a month had I just put that into private lending. My risk, if I own the asset, is that if the asset goes down in value, I've just lost money because I bought it and I've got no equity in it.
Yeah.
Right? Bought it at the top of the market. Whereas if I took a loan on it, that borrower owes me that $550 no matter what, because I would have it on a $750,000 building. So my worst real estate deal is one of the ones that, guess what? I'd live in, Clark, and I've no risk in it, right? That's what people think when they say, oh, I'm going to buy a house. You're free and clear. I think that's the word people use, free and clear. That's the riskiest thing you can do in real estate. Buy a house free and clear. You are risking every single dollar on the market. Buy a house free and clear. Your cash flow is crap. Your cash flow 4.5%, 5%. That's awful cash flow. Cash flow is just not a thing when you buy free and clear. Maybe you get 5.5%. We can trash 5.5% with a private loan. And in a private loan, we would have our principal is way more protected than if you own a house free and clear. So ironically, Clark, and I didn't think I was going to say this either, when I look at the data, my Class A property that is a great performer is statistically my worst performer. It's got the lowest ROI, it's got the lowest cash flow, and it's got the lowest return on my initial investment. As the only investment, I've lost money. And that's the point I'm trying to make. Buying a house free and clear is super, super risky in terms of your capital, and it's a really low return on your capital. You can do and should do bigger and better things with your cash than buy real estate free and clear.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is that if we do this episode again in 4 years or 5 years and look back at the exact same properties we're talking about with real estate, if you hold it long enough, for the most part, it corrects over time, right? Like, I feel like I could come back into my worst, my example I gave, where it's in the crappy neighborhood. Hopefully in 4 years, it'll actually get some traction. Maybe I can just knock the thing down and build something. So I think that it's all about, though, is it's still, David, it's delaying your gratification, man. At the end of the day, like, you know, if you can take some of the tips that we have given to you in terms of like strategically buying and, you know, take advantage of the suburbs right now, put leverage on it so that you're not, you know, your cash on cash is so low, you know, not buying, you know, looking for the gentrification. Where's the gentrification? You can see it, by the way. Like, it doesn't have to be a rocket scientist. Just get in your car and drive around. You can feel the gentrification or lack thereof. So, you know, if you can take some of these tips with you from this episode. But again, David, these are properties that, like, we haven't sold, right? It takes delayed gratification to not just want to pull the ripcord and just sell this stuff. And without the proper foundation and their mindset to be able to do this, none of this is going to be, you know, you're not going to have an access to any of this.
You know, if I were to just take a different filter, Clark, and filter it by year, it's very clear, you know, where the returns are. The ones I've owned the longest have the highest returns, and the ones I've owned the shortest have the lowest returns. What does that tell you? It tells you it's just time in the market creates the returns. You can't fast track real estate. You know, you can be a flipper, you know, buy and add value and sell something, but that's a job.
Yeah,
right?
That's a job.
You can be a developer. You can go and build something. That's a really hard job, full of crocodiles and risk, right? I'll give you my takeaway. Use leverage. Hold for a long time. Buy within a mile of where people really want to live, right? Or use hyper leverage, back to your point originally. Go to a builder, in the suburbs where there's a billion other houses that look exactly like yours. That's just a utility at that point in time. But put as little money as you can down. If a builder will give you zero money down right now, and all you got to do is swing on the debt for a bit, buy all the builder, buy everything he's got or she's got. So if I was in the market right now, Mike, I would buy with little or no money down, builder inventory in the suburbs, right? But I would not put my own money down in that, right? The suburbs, the outer suburbs are slow burners. And when I say slow burners, we're talking 20 years. And then you got to put on a roof and an AC. And we see it all the time. Clark, when we go out to the suburbs right now, what are the characteristics of the homes that have the biggest discounts right now?
Kind of like the first house I gave the example of, built in like the early 2000s, where it's like they're coming around right now. They need the roof is a 20-year roof. The AC is 12, 13 years. Like they need new roofs. They need new ACs. That's the easiest stuff to replace, right? A roofer can go knock out a roof in a day, right? It's going to cost $13,000, but it's a very easy fix. So there's going to be bigger discounts for people that don't want to do that, because it's going to be hard for them to sell because it won't pass a 4-point inspection, which means you can't get insurance, which means a mortgage is not going to give you a mortgage. So if you were looking at properties built between like 2002 to like 2007 or 8, probably a sweet spot to look for, or just go to your local builder or your regional builder or the D.R. Hortons, it doesn't matter, and go get as many specials and squeeze all of the best terms out of it, because they're going to give it to you.
And I'm going to give you an example. So we were just talking right there about the suburbs. 2 plays in the suburbs. Go to the builder, put no money down, and just get your tenant to bring their toothbrush. That's strategy 1. Strategy 2, go look for those 2004, 2005, 2006 homes that need new roofs, need new ACs. They're a little bit dated. Now, in that scenario, you're going to have to put more money down. You're going to have to buy it. You're probably going to have to buy it with cash or a hard money loan. And you're probably going to have to replace that roof, that AC, do a little bit of painting and carpets, and then you're going to refinance it, but you'll have a little bit of equity. So when you buy from a builder, you're going to have zero equity, but you're going to have zero money in it. When you go buy a house that needs a new roof, floors, doors, and baseboards, you're going to have probably 20 to 25% into this deal. So you're going to have 30 to 50 grand of your own money in it, but you'll have equity. You might have 70 grand of equity. What do you want? Do you want no money down and no equity, but at least you're on the journey? Or do you want to have $50,000, $70,000 in the deal with equivalent $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 of equity? Your call. They're both reasonable plays.
David, with those 2 examples you just gave, the best one that I think you should do is either, I don't care, just take action. Go buy the 2003 house at the discount. Go buy the brand, shiny new house from the builder. It doesn't matter either way. Just go do it. Get out right now. Take action, because you're going to be a winner. You're going to look back in 10 years, 5 years, and be like, thank God I did that.
Yeah, I love what you've just said, because there actually is no right answer there.
No.
If you have the 70 grand and you don't mind, put a bit of sweat equity into a deal so that you can make 70 to 80, 100,000 or 80 grand of equity, of which you can't eat, by the way. It's just stuck in your house, right? So do you want to park 70 grand so that you have 80 grand of equity, or do you want to have no money in whatsoever and just get rocking and rolling? But the answer is they both work. They're both right. There is no right answer. It's just, It depends if you have the capital or if you don't.
Yeah,
Other play, now this is talk about single family, multifamily, small multifamily here. My other play is never underestimate proximity to downtown. Just don't have anyone telling you people are moving in, moving out, doing this, doing that. Proximity to downtown, like people talking about the Florida housing market right now. That's meaningless. That's absolutely meaningless to me. Downtown core, specific neighborhoods, when there's such a massive difference between one neighborhood and the other, play the appreciation game, play the gentrification game right downtown. That's where all the money is made. That's where the fast money is made. It's where the growth is. It's where the appreciation is. And that's in every town and city. There are wealthy people and aspirational people in every town and city in the country. It's not, oh, I'm going to move to North Carolina because everyone's moving to Carolinas, or I'm going to move to LA, or I'm going to move to Denver. Look, in every single town, there are desirable neighborhoods that wealthy people are getting wealthier, if we like it or not. And the amount of inventory in these downtown core neighborhoods is very limited. So that's my other play. That's the takeaway from today. You don't have to buy, the beautiful home that I just gave you an example of. That for right now, it's a little bit stagnant, and my ROI was 4.5%. Okay. You don't, that, to Clark's point, come back and talk to me about that deal I told you is one of my worst.
Yep.
Come back and talk to me about that in 10 years time.
Yep.
That'd be an altogether different story. But to my first example, go get into that downtown core, get as close to it as you can. In many cases, what you're really buying is the dirt. Right, Clark? Like lot values where we live in Tampa and St. Pete, the right neighborhoods, the lot value is worth more than the house you're buying.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk about that real quick?
Yeah, that's the cheat code, I think, is that if you're going to take the downtown play, which is a little bit grimier, you're probably going to get an older house. The street's not going to look so cookie cutter like you will in the burbs. But the thing that I've learned over the last few years is the ratio. Okay. And this is the ratio of what you're paying versus what the dirt is worth, right? So in every single suburb in America, the dirt is worth 10 to 20% of that purchase price. If you're buying that $300,000 house, more than likely, that dirt is worth 20 to 30 grand, right? So there's not a lot of forced appreciation in that model. It's cookie cutter and it'll just go up over time, but there's not a lot of things you can do to force it, right? There's certainly more. You can be more agile when you buy the stuff close to downtown. Maybe you can change the zoning, but in our area, I know that whenever we buy stuff close to downtown, the dirt is usually 50, 60, 70% of the purchase price, right? So if we're buying a $300,000 property, the dirt's probably worth at least $200,000. Why do you care? Is because over time, that dirt is going to become almost more valuable than what you paid for it. So then you have the ability to knock it down and build something really cool, or to sell it to a developer, or you just have more options, right? But you kind of, a lot of times, David, you have to hold your nose for a little bit longer. It's a little bit more risky in terms of initially, because you don't know exactly where it's going to go. Whereas if you have the cookie cutter out in the suburbs, you can see it in front of you. Everything is nice and new and it feels good. And it's on a concrete slab and the plumbing is brand new and the AC is new. So it kind of depends on what you want to do. But again, I'm going to go back to what I just said. I don't care what you do. Go buy near downtown. Go buy the 2003 house in the burbs. Go buy the brand new house with all the bells and whistles from the builder. Just take action, because we are in a place right now where buyers have power. Okay, and if you have power to say, well, I'm going to sit on the sidelines and wait for interest rates to go down, you're going to wait until everyone else comes flying back into the market and it changes the market. That doesn't make any sense. David. And so, I think that this episode has been hopefully chock full of some nuggets that you can take away in terms of learning from our mistakes, hearing some of the things that we've done well to be able to kind of integrate it and integrate that into your strategy. And with that, David, what else do you have to say, and take us on out?
We have a lot of downtown core properties that we bought over the years for even recently. We bought properties for, 305 or 295 that are the dirt's worth 400. So when you get into somewhere where builders are knocking down, $400,000 houses to build $1 million homes, when you see that in your town, keep an eye on that neighborhood, because from time to time, you'll get somebody who's selling a home and they don't fully get the lot value. So they'll sell a house. They're like, it's like it needs a lot of work. I'll sell it for $315,000. And if you know what lot values are in that neighborhood, you might be buying a $315,000 house for, with sitting on a lot that's worth $400,000, just a lot. Yeah. But what you can do is if the house wasn't on the lot, you wouldn't be able to finance it, because the banks don't finance lots, right? It's not their business. But because there's this shitty old house on it, the bank will finance it because they'll finance the house. And so, like, getting into these very fast gentrifying neighborhoods, into houses that, you know, to your point, you might need to hold your nose a little bit while they're gentrifying. A lot of times you're buying the house when the lot value is worth more than the house. To your point about the suburbs, you're buying the physical structure. The lot's pretty much worthless, 10 grand, 20 grand. But when you're buying downtown, it's the value, it's the scarcity of where this thing is. And so I'll definitely leave people with that. So Mike, to give you value, it's time. You have to hold on to these things long enough. You need to either go put no money down and buy nice houses in the burbs where people want to be, or put lots of money down or play the inner core gentrification card. But I can tell you what not to do. And here's my what not to do. These lower income outer suburban neighborhoods generally don't do the business. That's kind of that's my overall take. At the end of the day, is, you know, Clark talked about a neighborhood that just hasn't appreciated. So when people tell you to go and buy cash, you know, such as X is cash flowing in the, you know, in the Midwest, this town, great cash flow. You can buy for $100,000. $100,000 homes don't make you wealthy. You just need to own too many of them. You need too many roofs, too many tenants, too many toilets, too many bathrooms, too many kitchens. So $100,000 homes are not going to do it. So it really doesn't matter when people say, oh, too many investors base their investments on what it looks like on a pro forma because it makes them feel good. That's not, I would say, stop right there, because that's the wrong way to look at real estate. It's about how much money you put down. So try and put down nothing and hold it for a long time, or try and put down something and buy a gentrification type play neighborhood. And that's where your growth is. That's my take. That's me out right there. What do you say? Do you agree with that or disagree with that, Clark?
Of course, that's kind of that sums it up. I couldn't have said it any better, David. So I think that wraps it up. This was fun. I know that both you and I are very passionate about talking about this, and it's always fun to look. It's fun to look back at yourself too and laugh at your screw ups a little bit. But it's also great to look back at deals that you still own that you get to pat yourself on the back for. And hopefully there's many more of those for both of us. And there's many more for you listening to be able to go in and maybe slip through and not make some of the mistakes that we did, because all you have to do is just slightly shift where you point the fire hose in terms of your investing strategy can make all the difference in the world. You may not see it for 3, 4, 5, 6 years, but over time, if you're going to take the sexy spreadsheet approach, or my step number 2, which was the cash flow investor, is that all you're doing is you're taking money that you should be putting into the renovations or the vacancy reserve account, whatever that looks like, and you're just stealing from it. And I know that doesn't say that on the pro forma at the bottom, that it says it's cash flow, but you're really just robbing from your future self. And I don't know about you, but stealing from my future self sounds less than exciting. So David, let's head on out. We appreciate it. Go hit the subscribe button. Give us things that you want us to talk about. Mike, we really appreciate you writing in, and we hope that we did a good job of being able to kind of answer your question and you took some things away. And David, with that, we'll see you next time. Well, that is a wrap for today, folks. We hope that this episode shed some light on the complexities of the real estate market and kind of really gave you some actionable insights. Because remember, you navigate the world of property investment, it requires more than just luck. You're going to need strategy, you're going to need knowledge, and of course, you're going to need a little dash of courage. And if you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Leave us a review on any of the podcast platforms that you listen to, and YouTube as well. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Burn Your Boats Wealth. and leave comments. Talk to us about things that you want us to talk about or things you disagree with us on. We appreciate all that type of insight. Your support really fuels our fire to bring you even more valuable content. So we appreciate you. We appreciate the support, and we will see you next time.
You've been listening to the Burn Your Boats Wealth podcast with Clark Lunt and David Shaw. We would love to hear from you. Please reach out at contact@burnyourboatswealth.com with comments, questions, and if you have a topic you would like Clark and David to discuss on an upcoming episode. We would very much appreciate it if you took the time to rate and review Burn Your Boats on your favorite podcast listening app, and make sure to follow and share on social media. Content in Burn Your Boats Wealth podcast is for entertainment purposes only and is not legal or financial advice. Please review our legal disclaimer at burnyourboatswealth.com. Thank you and have a great day.